Good evening. My name is Bob Winskowitz. I am the founder of SQAIRZ Golf. I'd like to welcome everybody to the first in a series of live stream events. This is where we have instructors from around the world come in and talk about issues with golf and people's golf game and provide some instruction and tips. Tonight, I am honored and excited to have Jim McLean join us. And Jim is an iconic instructor, legendary instructor, author, and Jim is ranked always consistently as one of the top teachers in the world. And I am so honored and pleased to have Jim on the SQAIRZ staff. And tonight we've picked a topic, and the topic is, what is the number one mistake golfers make? So with that said, I'd like to introduce you to Jim McLean.
Well, thanks, Bob, and it's a pleasure to be here. We've got a great topic tonight. We're going to talk about the number one mistake that I see at our golf schools. We're doing a tremendous amount of golf schools. By the way, I'm doing a school this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with 15 people in the school. That's our limit, so we cut it off at that. But I see probably the number one mistake, besides setup and the grip we could talk about, but the number one mistake that I see is from the top of the backswing. What starts the downswing? How do we transition from our backswing to our downswing? Most amateurs that come to my schools, and I've seen it my whole life, start from the top, from the upper body. And we call these the macho muscles, particularly for the men, where they start with tension and pressure mostly in their arms and shoulders. And I'm going to start with the right thing to do is to start from the ground up. I've been doing some talking about biomechanics recently of how the first move is really with the feet and the knees, which is a little push down or a little separation with the left knee from the right knee, but an action that's happening from the ground up. So working with Bob and his people from SQAIRZ, this goes hand in hand with what we're trying to do with the golf shoes, trying to use them for a better platform as you start into your downswing. So let's get back to what happens incorrectly from the top of the backswing. And this can be caused by getting the club face too open also. So there's a few things that can happen here that when the club face gets, we call it toe down or too open at the top of the backswing, then the player is going to have to use a lot of hand action immediately from the top of the swing to try to hit the ball straight to square the club face up. Now, from the top of the backswing, when we start with the upper body, the shoulders and the arms starting down where you're lurching out and over the top this way is a killer. It's a death move, I call it. And that goes back to one of the first books I wrote, The 8-Step Swing, where I went through about 15 to 20 killer moves. And we call them death moves in the swing because you're just dead from that position. Once you start from over the top and pressure down early, then we get into the chicken wing as we go through impact. We fall back away from the shot. We swing too steep down on the ball, and then we hit weak shots, oftentimes weak slices. You could pull the ball from there. You could chunk shots from there. So it's a pretty wide array of things that go bad because we didn't start from the ground up. Now, as we're working with people and trying to get them to feel what should happen, well, really, this pressure move into the ground happens way earlier in golf terms, earlier than most people think. And that's when the club really is getting just past left arm parallel. The club's getting up into the top right here. Well, a good player is already starting to move those knees, move the feet, and the club is then lagging or dragging behind the golfer as they start down. Now, there's a number of drills that we do to help people feel this. One of them can be to go up to the top and take the right hand off for a right-hander, of course. I can just hold it with my finger right here, and then I'll start down with my lower body, and you can see you get this free ride where you get this motion this far down without really doing anything. Very little pressure, almost no pressure in my left arm right here as I drop the club into the slot to hit the golf ball. That is a feeling of not pulling on the club and definitely not starting with my shoulders, but just feeling my arms drop. And this little drill right there can be a real good one for you to feel that action. Now, another great drill is a step and hit drill. So this really helps people in the schools. I do it in every golf school. It's a step hit drill. We start with the club upside down oftentimes, maybe even just with into my right hand. And we start here at an address position. We start the club away and we swing. But that step happens early. Now I'm going to say step when I step, and then you'll see when I swing. Step, swing. Step, swing. So the step happens just like it does in hitting a baseball or chopping a tree down, but that lower body moves first in the downswing, and then there's a lagging or dragging or following club that starts down, and it feels like that club is, feels like it's way behind me. I'm not trying to drop my arms behind me, but when I start down and just let my arms drop, the club will fall and stay behind the golfer instead of going the other way. It's like this with your hands when the club gets steep from the top this way. Now when my club's out here, the only thing I can do is swing across the golf ball, and you get a glancing ball across the face of the golf club. And that friction across the club face obviously really reduces how far you hit the golf ball. It's not a square hit. We also see the result then where you might see players with their hands very close to them as they go through the ball. They have no extension out through the golf shot. This is again another really good drill that we do with people. We just have them take the club and just slowly drag it on the ground out to, we call this position 7, halfway through, extension position, this way. And in extension position, you're going to see the arms are straight. Now, when I say straight, some people do this and their arms disconnect from their body. So I still want to feel when I go through the ball, like my arms are somewhat squeezed against my chest as I go through, and my arms are expanding out this way. A basic thing that I teach all of my teachers to teach is to break things down and use a building block approach to stop this, this move we see our friends make on the golf course. You might be doing the same thing, starting incorrectly from the top of the backswing. Transition is an absolute key move in golf. A lot of good players say this is the make or break position in golf. This changes everything. And the reason you know that is because you see all of these different swings. I was just down and watched Matthew Wolf down in Mexico last week, and he's taking the club way out here, and then it reroutes all the way around, and he just hits, he's a great player, NCAA champion, #1 player in college, and he's a tour winner. Other players will take the club to the inside, a flatter swing, and they still hit it great. So it's how you change direction, how you go from the top of the backswing and start down. And it's got to be a good player, you've got to learn to use leverage and use the ground to hit the golf ball. Maybe you've heard of ground reaction force, and that is when you push into the ground and pull up out of the ground. And some people even refer to this as a jump as you go through it this way. And then when you look at great players like Scotty Scheffler, for example, moving their feet, their feet are coming off the ground. Justin Thomas. I taught Lexi Thompson, and I got criticized actually for her swing at times because she was up out of the ground as she hit it. But that's a power move. I'm not suggesting that you jump or leap out of the ground tomorrow when you go play, but if you get down and into the ground feeling, and especially as you start down right here, then you can move up and your hips rise as you come into the impact zone. But now all these good things can happen in your golf swing if you transition better and improve how you start from the top of the swing and into the forward golf swing.
Boy, that was a lot.
Yeah.
That's Jim, I somebody who's played the game most of my life, I can appreciate that I think I've been probably guilty of that, those moves of over the top and too steep and things of that nature. But let me ask you, the first move on the downswing, is it the pressure into the ground in your heels? Are you pulling down? I'm seeing a couple of questions about the first move on the way down.
Yeah, well, in your backswing, the weight as you turn, I'm going to do this for a right-hander. So I turn my right hip back, and my right shoulder gets back, and the club gets depth. My weight is going to move toward my right heel, not completely to my right heel, but when we do force plates, we see that the top players, the weight moves more toward the right heel in the backswing. Now, as you change direction and move, you go to the ball of the left foot, this foot, my front foot right here, and then quickly back to that heel. So it's ball of the foot to the left heel as you come through, because to hit this golf ball hard, you've got to be moving away from the target line. If this is my target line, when I come to hit the golf ball, I need to have my left hip moving away so I can stay in balance. And then I can rip this golf club through because I'm in balance. If I go to my toes, in my downswing, I've got the weight of the club and my arms moving out toward that target line. And as that happens, it's natural for my weight to go a little bit forward. And you see players fall toward the golf ball a lot of times because you have a lot of weight moving out toward the target line. And then what the average player does is they don't want that to happen. They're not going to fall down when they play golf. So what do? They swing easier. And then they can have a nice looking swing, but it's not powerful. And that's because they're not using the feet the correct way and the hips, where you're going to have good rotation away. This is my target line, this white line here. As I come to hit it, if my left hip's moving away, my right hip's kicking out toward that line, my right hip's moving around, then I'm in balance where I can freely swing the golf club and stay in balance to the full finish.
You and I had talked a couple times about the importance of balance and stability, controlling your body consistently throughout the motion, but being balanced and stable, and how that allows you to generate the ground force and that term about using the ground. So I had somebody here email us in and said, in terms of using the ground, how's the best way to use the ground? I'm not so sure, but what is meant by that. But I mean, when we talk about using the ground, it is putting that pressure in and utilizing all of that force. Yeah,
well, footwork's important in every sport, and great footwork is seen in great players. So we want to learn to use the ground to our advantage. And I always try to even take the golf club away and just have people start to feel how things work, and get some fast movement from back and forth. You want to use the inside muscles in your feet. You're going to use the inside of your left foot to move to the right foot. I mentioned the weight's going to move. You can feel it moving a little toward your right heel. Some people might feel it actually moving quite a bit toward their right heel if they have been swinging back and their weight's been going toward this back toe. And that is a real problem. If you feel that in your golf swing, that's something we really do not want to have happen, where you're not going to be able to use your feet very well on the way through. You want to be able to maximize how you use your feet in golf. And that means inside muscles at the start, moving toward the right heel because my right hip's turning away, my right shoulder's turning back, My shoulders are making a full pivot. My hands are getting some depth behind me. Therefore, my weight should be going obviously toward the right heel. But a lot of people don't do that. Well, and a lot of people might go here and just lift the club up. They don't complete the shoulder turn. Those are all critical things. But it does start from the ground, and using this footwork to move your body. That's a dance step that you need to learn to improve your golf game and to be more consistent and to hit the ball more powerfully.
And it's interesting. I talk to a lot of people, and I get into this fun little debate, and I say, what's the most important piece of golf equipment? And people talk about the drive of the ball, and we talk about what piece of equipment really helps you generate swing speed. Well, the club doesn't help you generate swing speed. The ball doesn't. It's your connection to the ground, so therefore it is your golf shoe. And so that's where we focus, and we focus in on the fact that it's all about balance, stability, and ground connection. And I had somebody here talk about the weight distribution at the beginning of the swing. Where should it be from the left foot to the right foot? More on the front foot at the beginning of the swing, or more at the back?
I think the best you could do is try to get yourself balanced at 50-50. Now, when you're hitting a short iron, a 9-iron, a pitching wedge, a sand wedge, you're going to be narrower, and you can pivot off this left rotary, my left leg, because I can just stay on my left side, and that's easier to hit down on the golf ball. If I just stay left, stay over the ball, boom. And I think that's fine for short shots, chip shots around the green. But when we're starting to look for power, we have 2 points that hit the ground. Okay. And as we start, but for sure, you're going to see any good players moving their feet. Nobody's just going to stand here, a good player, and just freeze over the golf ball and do nothing. Nobody's going to start with their weight way over, to the left to hit a driver. You're going to see some players will load up a little bit on the right leg slightly early, and they may put 55 to 60% on the right leg. But 50-50 is a good feeling for it. I've always told people the first move in the golf swing is a little movement toward the target. Like everything in golf, it goes against what you would normally think is the right thing to do. But that would be a little forward press or a little bump with the hips, a little move maybe with the right heel. It can be very small, but a little move that gets you going, that gets you that rock into your backside. So there's definitely a pressure change into your back foot. The center of mass, you can look at my belt buckle. My belt buckle is going to move behind it. I'm not going to do this to hit the ball far. Of course, it's just crazy to think that. And you're going to load here onto a flat right foot. Your weight would be, as I mentioned, a little bit toward the right heel, but you're going to get behind the golf ball so you can move into it and hit it with your whole mass. There's so many people that are just swinging their arms and hitting it with their arm power and their wrist power, maybe trying to keep their head really steady, which I'm not saying that can be bad advice at times. It can be good, but the head's going to have a little turn, a little move. And after you hit it, you can maybe have a freeze frame here, and then your eyes and head release to the target. And you're hitting it with the whole body, not just with your arms and your hands, and definitely not out of sequence where you start down, as we said right from the beginning of the show, not with the right shoulder starting the downswing, or where you put that tension in your hands and arms from the top. We want to use gravity in golf. We want to use the ground. We want to use our feet, knees. I think the knees and the feet have been left out of kinematic sequence, which has always been first the hips, then the shoulders, then the arms, then the hands. But really, it should be the feet and knees first, then the hips, then the shoulders, then the arms, then the hands, to max out, full distance in the golf swing.
I get a question here. When they talk about breaking in the golf swing, what do they mean by breaking?
Yeah, well, that's when you're swinging this club at full force. There's lateral motion in the swing going forward until your hands and arms get to about right here at waist high, or the shaft parallel to the ground. And from this point on, you could say the brakes hit right here, and then you start turning back. You're going to see the lead leg going forward and then pulling back.
Mm,
So most people probably don't know that, but the lead leg goes forward and then it pulls back as you hit. And some guys like Justin Thomas, he really pulls it back, and you can see how that just creates a massive whip that this sends the golf club through at super high speed. The other way would be to have your upper body kind of go in front this way, and you just don't have it. You don't have any of that whip, or you could say that brake that allows the club to fly past a braced up lead leg. For me, my left leg.
great. I've got a question. It says, I'm a former tennis pro and have a tendency to have too much movement down, then up through impact, sometimes too much, resulting in either a hooking of the ball or sometimes hitting it thin. Any suggestion or tips how to get the right amount of movement?
Yeah, well, the tennis players I've worked with, some good ones are good because they have the great racket control. They understand easily how the racket works. Now, a tennis player, might go here too much and come up on it too hard. Possibly, I almost have never seen anybody go too much, but I understand there's always something that can surprise me that's possible. Now, that could be, I suppose, dropping just too much. And golly, you can see so many players that go down so far down on their start down, say like Joaquin Niemann, who's just fantastic, talented, great young, 23 years old right now. He's already, I think, a multiple winner on the PGA Tour, but a great player. Yeah, he really goes down. I'd say when you're going down, you're going to make sure that it's the right shoulder and the knees both that are going down. So I guess if you went down and kept your shoulders up and went that way, that's could be. I can't say too much without seeing the golf swing myself, but I would say as long as you keep the right shoulder, which is called right side bend, this way, you're going to be good. I think that's going to be no problem. That's not going to cause you to hook the golf ball. That's for sure. It's a very, very huge power move in modern golf.
Great. I have a question here. It says, does the left heel raising on the backswing for a right-hander help create club head speed?
Well, it can. I think as we get older, for sure, I think lifting the left heel in the backswing is a good thing because it's going to increase the amount of hip turn for sure. And then the more you turn your hips, the more you can turn your shoulders. You got to be a little careful that you don't get too much lateral movement when you do that. But I think, old time teaching always lifted the left heel. When I was a kid, I think that's the way everybody was taught, is to lift the left heel and then replant it on the way down. Now, a lot of modern golfers keep that heel down, and that's because they're young and super flexible. They can keep that left heel on the ground and still get a massive shoulder turn, and they can turn their shoulders more than 100 degrees with the foot down. And the good thing about keeping the foot down is you don't have to replace it. It's already in the ground right here. So that would be the argument for doing that. But then you look at some of the greatest players in the history of the game. Jack Nicklaus would be right at the top of the heap. He lifts the heel. Tiger Woods didn't lift his heel. So, there's the two greatest players of all time, probably. You could go to Sam Snead, lifted his heel. He's certainly on Mount Rushmore with Ben Hogan, I guess. There's so many great players that, as we look through it, McIlroy keeps his heel down mostly. There are times when I've seen him lift his heel up a little. Lifting the heel is going to move your left knee, help you move behind it. It's going to move your left side. It's going to get you to turn more. So I think for a lot of people that I teach, we suggest lifting that left heel. In every school I do a little Jack Nicklaus drill where Jack always would do his little preliminary stuff in the morning, and he would always work on this knee movement and it's working off the insides of his feet. So even the greatest players in the world will do a lot of these small little drills, small movements to get their body, working in the morning and get it ready to go.
Great. I have a question here. It says, hi, Jim, could you give us your thoughts on how and when the wrist set takes place? I fight rolling inside, have tried the push down with the left and pull up with the right, still struggle.
Yeah, well, I'm a big advocate of the one piece move takeaway. So we don't really think of the wrist too much in my way of thinking. It's keeping our hands on the club here and getting the triangle or the arms and the shoulders to initiate the takeaway of the golf club. And when that happens, if I'm looking down the line here, without doing anything, as I start to take the club away, the club is going to go to the inside of the line as we go away. And then the weight of the club and the relaxation in your wrist causes the wrist to start to hinge somewhere right in here. Now, that doesn't mean with someone that gets up here and they're stiff wrists that I'm maybe going to start having them set the club a little earlier. There's some, the kids a lot of times and the ladies, I'll have them set the club a little more early to get the club up on the backswing. But the way you set those hands, that's really important. When I set or cock the wrist here at this position, I want to make sure that I'm not cupping my left wrist. I think you can see my logo here.
Yep.
Cock this way. That's a terrible move. So I'm trying to get my left wrist to still be very flat right here as the club gets set. We use a little drill right here. When the club gets to left arm parallel, we form a 90-degree angle. So that's called an L drill. So it just forms the letter L as I smoothly take the club up. I don't like to have people feel wrist action right off the beginning, though. I like that getting everything away together. I think when you do that, you have a swing that's much more repeatable, that you can, that works from putting to chipping to full golf swing. It kind of blends into all the shots in golf, the basic shots in golf. So that's the way I teach it.
Great. I've got a question. It says, well, I tell people that the heels are the accelerator and the toes are the brake in the golf swing. And I've got a question here on that, which says, the best drill would you ask Jim, what is the best drill for staying back on your heels through the downswing? Or if the player does get on the toes, how do you prevent the heel strike?
How do I prevent the heel strike? Did you just say was that?
Heel strike? Yeah, let's just
The
say
heel
it says
strike?
here, the best drill for staying back on your heels through the downswing, or if the player does get on his toes, how do you prevent?
Well, the best drill for keeping your feet down is just a flat-footed drill that again, this is a drill for some people that will do is just keep their feet flat on the ground and swing the golf club like this to trying to keep them down a little more. People that are really up off their toes too much. I do believe that from the top of the backswing, when you move over, there's the first move is to the ball of the lead foot and then back to the heels. So that's your accelerator. And that acceleration goes from the ball of the field to the heel. And some players are pulling that heel back away. You'll notice that on television now. Certainly the long drive people, they're pulling that heel back. The right foot might pull back. It's like a little scissoring action right there, it's called. But to start to do that kind of stuff with your feet, that's high-end stuff, trying to hit the long drive champion stuff. I think being more stable on your feet is really important. I think doing what I've told, I mentioned in this little series tonight of how to use your feet is so important. I feel like getting that weight, you just cannot get your weight to your right toe on the backswing. Terrible place to go here. And then when you start down, I think the weight goes toward the ball of the foot and then away from the target line this way. And I just think I'm such a big believer in a building block approach, that can you do it without a club first? And then can you do it with small swings, bigger swings, and then a full swing? And that's what we do here down at the golf school. That's how we teach people to improve their footwork and therefore their ball striking.
I'm going to take two more questions. We're right at 8:00 and a half an hour. I've got a gentleman here that says he's always has a problem with chipping and chunking the ball from short distances. How do I improve my chipping?
Yeah, okay. Now we're getting into something totally different. There's different skill sets in golf, but I'll touch a little bit on the chipping here. With tight lies, grainy grass, wet grass, it's particularly the very tight lies that we have in golf now that really didn't exist, say 20 or 25 years ago. You've got to be able to land the club in the right spot. Let me see if I can get a golf ball here so you can get an idea what I'm talking about. Narrow stance. Don't lean the shaft too far forward. Just slightly forward is okay. You might want to have the club pointed right into the center of your body this way. If you open the face a little bit, you can put the shaft slightly forward. Make sure that you get your chest forward. Your buttons on your shirt should point ahead of the golf ball. So that's huge. A little open stance, never closed. So I could go on for a long time here, Bob, and I'm going to try and give them some good stuff because I spend a lot of time with people on chipping and pitching off tight lies. Now, from that position, you keep these hands and arms as light as you possibly can so the club can fall, and you must make sure that you turn through. So this is the worst thing that can possibly happen. Get tight and then go like that. Or it could be worse than that. And I see that all the time. Make sure that you stay up, go forward, finish toward the target. Even on a small little chip, you should keep yourself moving this way. Don't pull on the club, and certainly don't be tight with your hands and arms, and you're going to do a lot better. But that setup is so critical to hit crisp chips and do it all the time.
Great. Last question. It says, any advice on improving a negative attack angle with the driver?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of this happens with a better setup, but even from a good setup position where you've got some tilt away from the target, people overdo this, but a little bit of tilt. And it's so important to know that the good drivers, when they hit a golf ball, their head moves back that way. So if you're moving ahead of the golf ball, that's for sure going to get you steep on the golf ball. Make sure you've got the ball up off your left heel in this area. You start back a little bit with your tilt away from the target. When you turn away from the golf ball, make sure that you turn your left shoulder behind the golf ball. And then, that hitting slightly on an ascending blow with the driver is an extra from 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 yards longer with your driver, assuming you can hit the center of the club face. But I hope those ideas right there help you do a little bit better.
Well, Jim, listen, this has been great. I really appreciate, all of us at SQAIRZ, we really appreciate the time that you've made tonight to talk about the golf swing and help people play better golf. And that's why we do this. We do this we're not here to sell shoes tonight. We're here to let people know that when you buy the shoes, we actually want to help you play better golf as well. So, you're part of that, and we appreciate you being part of the company. So if people on here now, all these folks want to find you, how do they get a hold of you to book some lessons?
That's pretty easy. You can just go to jimmclean.com. That's probably the easiest thing you could do. We have a good website. You can always call us. I'm at the Biltmore Hotel right now. We have two schools down here in Miami, one in South Beach and one here in Coral Gables. Just did my school in Mayacoba in Mexico this past week. And I've got a few other locations too that are really nice. So, hey, thanks for having me on here, Bob.
Thanks, Jim. Good night, everybody. Thank you for attending. And we're going to have the next one next month. And we've got a very interesting guest next month in terms of fitness and golf. So we'll be sending some very interesting emails out and touching upon that. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.